You will hear a telephone conversation between the organizer of a short story competition and someone who wishes to take part in the competition. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6.
Good morning, Dave speaking.
Oh, hi. I'm phoning about a short story competition. I saw an advert in a magazine and I was just calling to get some details.
Yes, certainly. I'm the competition organizer, so I should be able to help. What kind of details are you looking for?
Well, does it cost anything to enter?
Yes, there's an entry fee of £5.
Okay, that should be fine. It's a short story competition, so how many words is that?
Well, we want to give people a reasonable amount of freedom, but the guidelines are around 3,000 words.
Oh, that sounds quite a lot.
Well, it's not as much as it used to be. We did have a limit of 5,000 words, but some people thought that was too many. So this year we've reduced it.
Right. And does the story need to be about anything in particular?
No, you can write about any topic you like. But the main point of the competition is that it has to have a surprise ending.
Oh, I see. That sounds interesting. I don't think I've ever written a story like that before.
Yes, it's something we've introduced for this year's competition.
Right. I'm 18. Is there any age limit?
Yes, you need to be 16 or over. So, if you're 18, that's fine.
Great. So you have the competition once a year, is that right?
Yes, we start advertising in January, and the competition takes up a lot of the year. We give people a few months to write their story, and then it takes quite a long time to judge all the entries and to announce the winners.
I see. So when is the closing date for the competition? It's already April. I hope I'm not too late.
No, you've still got plenty of time. You need to submit your entry by the 1st of August. After then, it will be too late. Although you can always enter next year's competition.
Okay, good. So how do I enter?
Well, we have a website, and the best way to enter is to complete the entry form online. We also have more details of the competition on the site. Shall I give you the web address?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's www.comp4ss.com, and that's the number 4, not the word 4.
Okay, thanks. I've got that. So I can complete the entry form online, but how do I send the story? Do I print it out and send it to you?
Well, you may want to print the story out so you can review it, but don't post it to us. When you've finished your story, you will need to email it to us. The email address is on the website I gave you.
Okay, that's fine.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you will have some time to look at the questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
Can you tell me a bit about how the competition is judged and what the prizes are?
Yes, of course. Well, once we have all the entries, I send them to all the judges. Our competition is quite popular, so we are lucky to be able to use famous authors who are very interested in the competition.
That's fantastic! It's great to know that someone famous will be reading my story.
Yes, that's right. It takes them quite a while to read through the entries, but eventually they decide on the top 5 stories.
I see. And what happens then?
Well, they will be published online so everyone can read them. They will not be in any order at this point. They will just be the 5 stories that the judges think are the best.
And do all the top 5 stories get prizes?
No, it's just the top story and the runner-up.
So how is the top story decided?
Well, once the top 5 stories are available, it will be the public who will vote for their favourite story.
Right, I see. So I need to get all my friends to vote for me then?
Yes, that's a good idea.
And what is the prize?
Well, the runner-up gets a prize of £300, but the winner gets a trip to Spain to attend a workshop for writers.
Wow, that's brilliant! I'd better get writing straight away.
Yes. Good luck.
Thanks.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 2. Section 2. About a project to conserve dormice in one area of the UK. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Good morning, and welcome to our weekly programme about countryside matters. With me today I have Jackie Lamerton. Jackie works for the nature organisation Action for Wildlife, and she's appealing for volunteers for a project she's organising. So if you think you might be willing to help, please listen carefully. Jackie.
Thank you. Yes, as you've just heard, I represent a charity called Action for Wildlife, which works to protect plants and animals. And I'm here today to talk about a project to save a type of mouse known as a dormouse. We can still find the dormouse in this area, but in the last few decades, the number of dormice has seriously declined, not just in this country but across the world. There are several reasons for this: loss of habitat, climate change, competition for food. And this area of the UK is now regarded as one of the last strongholds. So naturally, we want to help the creature to survive here as much as we can. The aim of the first stage of our project is simply to identify specific locations where dormice are still to be found and estimate the number we have here. So I'll just tell you a little bit about the creature in case you don't already know. The dormouse is a very attractive, very small mammal. It only weighs about the same as a couple of pound coins. It's bright golden in colour, and it has a thick furry tail and big black eyes. Now, you've probably all seen a picture of a dormouse, but you're very unlikely to have seen a real one because they're strictly nocturnal. Also, they hibernate from October to April, so it's not around at all for about half the year. So where is the dormouse to be found? Well, dormice need to be near a variety of trees and plants, so they can be sure of a continuous supply of food throughout the spring and summer. They feed on flowers, pollen, fruit, insects, ripe nuts, things that are available in turn as the summer progresses. Here in the UK, the dormouse is most likely to live in places like hedgerows or woods, or at the edges of farmland. So how do we find out exactly where dormice are? Well, as they're hard to spot, as I said, we have to use indirect methods. Instead of trying to see dormice themselves, we look for evidence of dormouse activity. Dormice eat hazelnuts, so we'll be looking for the shells that dormice have opened to get at the nut inside. A lot of wildlife species eat hazelnuts. It's not just dormice. But it's usually possible to tell which particular animal has opened a nut by looking at the marks on the shells. So now, for those of you who would like to help us carry out this survey, let me tell you exactly what to do. You'll need to get an identification sheet like this from us. Then you should spend time looking for hazelnut shells in the bottom of hedgerows or on the ground in woodlands.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20.
If you find one, use the identification sheet to try and establish what kind of creature has opened it. You'll see from the pictures on the sheet that different creatures do it in different ways. For example, you'll see that insects make a small hole in the shell, less than 2 millimeters across. Then there's another type of mouse called a wood mouse. Wood mice make a hole in the shell too, but they leave parallel tooth marks on the inner rim of the shell, as well as rough scratches on the surface. Thirdly, there are little mammals called voles. These creatures don't leave any marks on the surface, but they leave tooth marks on the inner rim of the hole. And these marks are neat and parallel, so they're fairly easy to identify. Then there are squirrels and birds. They both open the nuts, leaving half shells that have got jagged edges. And finally, we have our dormice. They make a hole in the shell that has a smooth inner edge, and the tooth marks it leaves are on the surface, at an angle to the hole. And these are the ones we're looking for, of course. Firstly, if you do find any nuts which you think have been opened by dormice, you need to record their location as precisely as possible. You can use the grid references on a map, or you can sketch your own map. But if you do, be sure to include landmarks or road names. It's very important that we know exactly where the shells came from. Then put the nutshells in a small container. Any kind will do, a film box or a matchbox, anything that prevents them from being crushed in the post. And then finally, give them a label, just your name and contact details, and send them to Action for Wildlife. When we receive them, an expert will look at the shells to confirm your identification. The address to send them to is...
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear a female student inquiring about changing her course. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hi, my name is Rosanna McLaren. I'm a bit early, but I have an appointment to see the Assistant Registrar, Andy Matthews, at 10 a.m.
Hi, I'm Andy Matthews. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. My tutor advised me to come to see you about changing my course.
Yes, I've had an email from your tutor, David Vine. Let me just call it up. Here we are. It says, Tutee Rosanna McLaren is on the Wednesday part-time course and wants to change to the distance learning program. Have you any problems with the course itself?
Oh no, I love it. I think the course is really worthwhile. The theoretical sessions once a week on Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. are really good.
You have 2 two-hour sessions then?
Yes, that's it. And I have to say, I think the practical session from 4 through to 9 in the fashion workshops are also good fun. But I am finding it all very tiring, and it makes me too exhausted for my work on Thursdays and Fridays.
You work the other 4 days of the week?
Yes, and some Saturdays.
I see. So, what do you want to do?
I'd like to change to the program with the distance learning component instead of the Wednesday sessions.
Yes, that is a possibility. I see from your tutor, Dr. Vine, that he has no problem with this, but you realize it's possible you'll have a different tutor.
Yes, I'm aware of that. It's a shame because he's a very good tutor. What do I need to do now?
First, we just need you to fill in this transfer form and the claim form for the reduction in fees.
Oh, I didn't realize it was cheaper.
Oh yes, it's £1,000 less a year.
It gets even better. Can I start the distance learning program from now?
I don't see why not. I just need to get a signature from your tutor, which should take only a short time. I'll email it to him now, and then he can sign it and put it in the internal mail.
Okay.
But I also need to go through with you what is involved in the distance learning program to make sure you are clear about everything.
Well, I understand I attend the weekend course once a month, and that I can book a bench in the fashion workshop at any other time.
You have a computer at home for the distance learning?
Oh, yes. I have the necessary equipment for making video calls over the internet already. It's the flexibility of the distance learning over the internet that is very useful. And what makes it even more interesting is that I don't have to spend a lot of time traveling to and from the university on the Wednesday. I can adapt it to my own routine, as I will be able to do the theory over the internet from home when I want. The same is true of booking a tutorial online using Skype.
Yes, it is amazing, isn't it? It's in its infancy, but it's been up and running for a year now, and it's going rather well.
Can I just ask if it's possible to have a face-to-face tutorial at any time as well?
There is no reason why you shouldn't be able to.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen carefully and answer questions 26 to 30.
What about the assessment for the distance learning? I take it that it's the same as for the other program?
Let me see. Each month you are expected to keep a written course diary and to present a seminar paper, and at the very end of the course there will be a written exam which will account for 30% of the total marks.
What about the coursework? How much does it account for?
The design portfolio, which you need to present at the end, accounts for 50%. I would point out just one thing, and that is that on the distance learning program, some tutors like to see the design portfolio twice each term to make sure you're on the right track. But of course you can take it in at any time to show your tutor. And as part of the assessment for the portfolio, you have to present at least one fashion item at a fashion show at the end of the course.
Is there anything else?
No, that's it.
Thank you for all your help.
No problem. Hope it all works out well for you now.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 4. You will hear part of a lecture on cities of the future. You now have 30 seconds to read questions 31 to 37.
OK, we've been looking at how societies will develop in the future and at the increase in the size of cities. So I want to talk to you today about the key considerations in these cities of the future. There are 3 key elements I want to look at, and these are the new features they will have, issues of size, and the main problems to be considered. First of all, individual transportation will be a big factor in these new megacities as public transport becomes unmanageable. There'll be a huge rise in the use of segways, which are personal transporters like motorized scooters. As a result, and partly also to reduce pollution, roads will be altered so that they are narrower and will take up less of a city's space than they do currently. Naturally, this is a major change to the infrastructure, and something that may hinder it is the huge amount of investment it will require. The next thing is, what is going to happen to the commercial areas? We do not want these to become even larger concrete jungles than they are at present, so we have to look at design. And current designs for city development include building gardens on the roofs of these buildings to make a more pleasant environment for workers. And you may think that these areas will expand to cope with increased commercial activity. In fact, the prediction is that they will cover 1/5 of the area that they do at present as we build upwards. The exception to this is shopping centres, which we predict will expand with more and more temperature-controlled malls. What may cause difficulties is that the superstores will be confined to the outer edges of the city, as they will be too big to fit into the new malls. Then, of course, there are the residential areas, and these will undergo their own changes. One particular development will be houses which are built from glass, as innovations in this material allow it to provide light without causing problems with temperature inside a building. The residential areas will not be allowed to expand without limit, as happens in some areas at present, and their size will be restricted to a population of 15,000. One issue, which has yet to be resolved, and I'm not sure it ever will be, is how we manage to house older residents. They will be increasing in numbers as time goes on. Finally, how will these cities live? We know we have limited energy sources, so what will we do? Well, something currently in development, which will be a feature, is that waste is going to become an energy source. For example, to provide gas in homes. Also, as new technology and systems are developed, we will find that energy plants will become smaller. Another energy source we could use, but one which raises issues of having enough space and too much noise, is wind farms. Because of the problems, I'm not convinced these will be the grand solution to our energy problems that we thought they were going to be.
You now have 15 seconds to read questions 38 to 40.
Now, moving on to looking at the social aspect of cities, we need to look at housing and how people will live. Cities currently have flats in the centre, populated by single people and wealthier residents, and families tend to move to the outskirts. In the future, the centre of cities will see a dramatic change. We will see many more examples of cooperative buildings. This is where people join together to form a company that owns the building they live in. And despite continuing shortages, there will also be a rise in the provision of retirement homes in city centres, so that the elderly can have easy access to hospitals and shops. Recently, we have seen a levelling off in the growth of private housing, and I think that will not change. But we are likely to see more social housing, as far fewer people will be able to afford to own their own homes. OK, now, if anybody has...